Welcome to another tutorial on XStreamer. This is version 0.2.0. Since version 1 was just a proof of concept, I've gone through and rewritten the entire application, hopefully making it a little bit better. I am Dave Carver, also known as the Bomber Guy. I am part of the Central Ohio X-Wing group, and XStreamer was mainly written as a tool for our own streaming purposes, but I figured it would be useful for a wider group, so you've got the tool here to work with your X-Wing streams. What I've gone through and done is we now have a totally rewritten application. You still need to have Java 8 installed, and you do need a JDK installed. It is recommended that you have that. Oracle's website does have several versions for various operating systems. Most of you will probably need the Windows x64 JDK. Go ahead and download and install that. Follow the instructions to get that all set up if you haven't already gone through and done so. New releases for XStreamer is available at the GitHub page. It is at kingargyle/xstreamer/releases. Version 2.0 is the first one that's listed up here at the top. Again, there's some information in here that you should go through and read before you go through and install XStreamer. Particularly, once you've launched the app the first time, and we'll go through this in the tutorial, you will need to go through the preferences of the application to get everything set up for your particular environment and your configuration. I've tried to make this as configurable as possible, and everything is configurable through the GUI. So there's no longer any need to go through and manually edit text files or properties files or anything like that. Everything should be able to go through and be done through the graphical user interface now. One of the big important differences between XStreamer and the 0.1 and the 0.2 is that you now do have native binaries for your individual operating systems. So if you are running on a Windows system, you'll want to go through and download the win32.zip. If you're on a Mac, you want to go through and download the Mac zip. And if you're running on a Linux system like Ubuntu, Mint, or Red Hat, you want to go through and download the Linux tar.gz and go through and then uninstall or go through and unzip those particular files or untar it to a particular directory. Now, what I've gone through and done, I've already gone through and did this for the Linux version. The other versions will be very similar types setup. You will go through and get the XStreamer binary. So under Windows, it'll be exe. Under Linux, it's just an XStreamer itself. The only directory that you should really ever be concerned about and that you'll need within your configurations is this templates directory. That is, again, where all the free marker templates are stored that you can go through and use for your overlays. There are a couple of new ones which we'll get into a little bit later. Mainly I wanted to go through and show that you can also go through and use it for generating regular text files. And I used the Still TV style templates to go through and have those out there. So we'll go through and take a look at those a little bit later. But to get started, we'll just go ahead and double click on the XStreamer. And this will go ahead and start launching the application. It'll create a empty workspace directory. And then we will now get a new version of the application in here. You also already will notice that there's a different look to the UI. And there's some additional functionality added on here. The old way I was going through and writing the application wasn't going to give me the functionality that I needed going forward, and to be able to easily go through and quickly do the updates and stuff that I wanted to get done for the community as a whole. So I went through and totally rewrote the application. You now have a general tab, and you can go through and modify and expand out these windows as much as you need to. But there's a general tab. There's the standard countdown timer is there. You have the player 1 and player 2 squad list tabs, which you can go through and use as you did in the last application to go through and update the values. We do have some new fields that you can go through and update as well. We'll get back into that once we get the files loaded in here. But to begin with, let's go through and set up these preferences. Now, you have a couple different options with these preferences now. You got a file menu, you got an edit menu, and which has the preferences window, and we'll also get into this show view menu later on. But for now, if you're under Windows or Linux, go through and do preferences. If you're under Mac, the preferences will be under the About section, the About menu option. So you can go through and click on that. It's going to be should look and behave and act as close as possible to a native Mac application. So we'll click on preferences here. It'll bring us up first to this general section. This section you can pretty much ignore right now. A lot of this stuff is going to be going away. The framework I'm using to build this off of automatically included some of this stuff. I just haven't had time to go through and remove it. The two main sections you're going to be concerned about, though, are Squadron and Timer. Now, Squadron is, we've already got some default directories set up, but the XStreamer output directory is where you're going to want to have, which is the directory where all your files will go through and be written to by default. Right now, they will be written into the XStreamer directory itself. If you do not want those to be there, then go ahead and select the Browse button. And I'm going to go ahead and change this around so that it goes through and puts stuff into this test folder. And we'll just go through and put it into this test folder here with some of the other files I have out here as well. So we'll just put everything out to this test folder. My templates directory is pointed automatically to the templates directory that we have from the unzipped application. You probably want to go through and leave that by default. If you have moved that directory somewhere else and you've gone through and created your own templates and stuff, you will want to go through and change this to that. Otherwise, you can just copy your own custom templates into this directory, and you'll be able to go through and use those. The first player squad file is going to be the file name that is going to be generated, that you want to have generated for your player one. So this is going to be the one that's being used by the templates to go through and output for the first player. Most of the time, I go through and I just call it player one. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and set this up so that it's going to be a text file. I'm going to tell it to go through and use the Steel TV style template. So and those output text files. So we're just going to go call this one player one squad .txt. And we'll do the exact same for player 2. We'll call that player 2 squad. You also now have the ability to go through and specifically go through and tell it which of these templates that it needs to go through and use for each player. Because layouts could be different. You could have a different way you want to go through and represent each player, so that we give you the ability to go through and generate them and use different templates. So go into select Browse, select Templates, and we'll go through and just say we're going to use the left aligned one for player 1, and then we'll say we're going to use the right aligned one for player 2. Player file names. Now, the one new feature that we have within the app is the ability to go through and actually enter in the player names into the application itself, and it will go through and write out those names to a text file. You can then use these as text inputs, file inputs into OBS Studio for updating the information. So when you go through and enter that stuff in on the app, it'll automatically update these files, and then they'll automatically get updated on your OBS Studio overlays. So we'll go ahead and hit apply there to apply those changes. The timer options, again, this is where you can go through and set up some customization for the timer. I am going to go through and put the timer files also out there in the test directory. So we'll go through and just put it there, select the test. The file name is by default is always going to be timer.txt. And then you got the default time that you want to go through and put in there. So by default, the timer is set up for a 75-minute countdown, so it's 1 hour 15 minutes. But you can go through and change that. So if you're doing a epic match or something like that, you can go through and set it for 2.5 hours or 3 hours or however long the match links are that you want to go through and count down to. Again, we'll go ahead and just hit apply here for this, and then we'll go ahead and hit OK. Nice thing is that all you have to do is set this up one time, and then from that point forward, the preferences will be saved on automatically and reloaded on every restart. So you don't have to go through and mess around with any configuration files or any text editors to go through and work with any of these files now. Everything can be done and managed through the graphical user interface here. A couple new sections that we have here. We've got a general section, and that's contains both the timer, and it also has this new news ticker option. For beginning with, we'll go ahead and just enter in a couple player names. So it'll be like Tomax Bren is the first player, and then the second player would be the evil Suntir Fell. And we'll go ahead and hit update. That is going to go through and should have generated two files out in our test directory called player 1 name and player 2 name. Those two contain files Tomax Bren within it, and also Sunter Phil. So anytime you go through and between matches, if you got the additional players coming in, you got going through and setting up for the next round, all you have to go through and do is go back into XStreamer, change the player 1 name, change player 2 names, hit update. It'll automatically update into your OBS studio, and you don't have to go through and manually mess around with updating them that way. Everything can be done now through XStreamer. There is one request I saw that somebody had put out on the Nova Squadron group, was to have a possible news ticker. And there is an ability now within the application to go through and do that. This is just a free-form text field. And if we go through and enter in some text here, this is a sample for the news ticker. You can include such things as Duncan Howard lost in the first round, or anything else that you may want to go through and include in there. So in order this will then be written to a text file called ticker.txt, and it's put out in the exact same directory as where you had specified for the player files to be put. So we hit update. We will now see that we have a ticker.txt text file out here that you could go through and use within OBS Studio to go through and do some marquee or scrolling effects within it. So if you want to give real-time updates or some news from your tournament, whatever, you can go through and use the news ticker feature to go through and put that information into that lower third. So that then also brings us over here to the timer. Timer works very much the same way as it did before. When you start the timer, it will go through and start writing the information out to timer.txt. You can again use this within OBS Studio as a file input to go through and do this. The timer file is updated every second, and it will stop updating once the countdown has reached 0. The countdown section here itself will be updated as well. So again, if we go through and go ahead and start the timer, we started at 1 minute, 1 hour 15 minutes, and we got a countdown going on to that. The the timer.txt file was created out here and is updated every second on here. OBS Studio will pick that up and automatically update the file on the screen itself. So we'll go ahead and hit a pause, and then we'll go ahead and reset this timer back to 1 hour 15 minutes. And if we go through and start this again, you'll see that it had gone through and reset it down here, and we started it back at the time that you had specified. You can also go through and manually change these things so that if you wanted to change it to, for a final match, you didn't want to go through and change the default value. You can make it for 2 hours 15 minutes. Start the timer, and it will go through and start making the changes and update the timer.txt file that's out there. So that's the timer ability of the application. The big benefits and big changes that have come in have been with the ability to import the player files. You still need to go through and use a export from either Yet Another Squad Builder or the X-Wing Squad Builder, or really any application that goes through, any of the squad builders that go through and use XWS as their output format. So for those that are wondering what we're talking about and are not familiar with it, you can go out here to Yet Another Squad Builder. You can go through and let's say we'll select a log in here first. We'll go ahead and just log in with Google. And I'm going to load up one of the many squads I have out here. So we're just going to load up this. Let's just bring up a standard match. And we'll just bring up the Bombing Bulldogs. Then this is give you the list. You can then go through and scroll down to the bottom, select Export to XWS. That will give you this list of JSON. You can then go through, copy that, save it out to a text file. I've already got some that are saved out there that I'll go through and use as examples here, but we'll go ahead and do this one here for right now. We'll go through and bring that up into a text file. And we'll go bring up my text editor here. I'll go ahead and paste this in here. And then we'll go through and save this one. And we'll go through and put this in the XStreamer directory. And we'll just call this player1.json. Then we'll go ahead and save this exact. We'll go ahead and export another one from Yet Another Squad Builder. And let's say we'll go through and bring up a Scum and Villainy one. We'll go ahead and load up, say, Kath and the Chaos Boys. And we'll go ahead and load Kath and the Chaos Boys in here. And then we'll go through and export this out as well. And again, we'll go through and copy this. We'll put this out into a text file. We'll call it, we'll pop this text into there, do a save, put it back in the exact same directory as the other one, and we'll call this one player2.json. Now, X-Wing Squad Builder does this a little bit differently. It will actually go through and download a file called, and you can name it whatever you want, but it usually has an XWS extension to it. The new application here, XStreamer, can go through and looks for JSON or XWS file extensions. So either one will go through and work. But the important thing is you need to get the JSON files into a place where you can go through and use them. Hopefully most of your players are going through and doing this. Otherwise, hopefully you have some internet access to be able to go through and quickly enter in on the player squads, export them out, and then get them in there. Eventually, I would like to go through and get automatic imports ability. So I need to go through and contact the authors of Yet Another Squad Builder and the X-Wing Squad Builder in order to get access to the APIs or learn what the APIs is to be able to go through and import individual squads directly within XStreamer. It's something I would like to go through and do in the future. but it doesn't have that ability right now. So right now you have to still go through and create these initial text files. Now that we have those initial text files created, we can go back over to the application here, and we'll go through, bring the application back up, and we'll go through and hit the import these squads. So we'll do File. There is an import menu option now within the application. Select Import. It'll bring up the General and Squads tabs. What you want to go through and do is the only information that you really need to be concerned about right now is the import players. Squads, they do plan to go through and hopefully eventually add on other extensions and other import mechanisms on here, but for right now, the one thing that's in there is player squads. So you hit next. You can then go through and select what the player 1 squad is going to be. In this particular case, we're going to go through and do player 1 JSON, but as I said, it looks for either JSON or XWS, so you can go through and filter on either one of those. We're going to do player 1 JSON. We'll go through and browse to player 2 and bring in that squad file. Then all you have to do is go ahead and hit finish. That will go ahead and then go through and load in the files. It will have also gone through and automatically created out the player 1 squad and the player 2 squad TXT files. If we take a look at either one of these, you'll see what the output for these are. Right now, it does not show any pilot skill values or anything like that. We'll get into this in a little bit. But it did go through and automatically generate out the values. It also went through and generated out any shield and hull values that the squad would initially start off with. If we take a look at player 2 squad, you'll see that we have an asterisk represents the shield, and the H is representing hull values. We'll go through and set up some additional information in here, and we'll come back and check these files in a little bit. But when you hit the import button, what it went through and did was it loaded in the file, and it loaded up the player squads into these player 1 and player 2 tabs. So you can go through and browse through these like the prior one. It will go through and show you the player 1 points and the player 2 points. It does go through and show the entire values here. There does seem to be a slight bug here. I need to go back and fix in a future release, but it's also supposed to go through and show you the total points of the entire squad up here. But this, as you go through and work through each one of these and select each one of these, you'll get the updated point values for those particular ships. A couple of new fields that we have in here, besides just being able to go through and update the hull values and the shield values, you can go through and assign what the pilot skill value is for a particular ship. You can also go through and assign a unique identifier for a ship. So if you got multiple generics that are in the list and you want to be able to go through and track them on your screen, maybe you have counters or something that you go through and place next to them on the screens, and you move with the ships. You can go through and assign a unique ID for that. In order for this to get updated, you have to go through and hit update on these. It does not go through and let you go through and select each and every one of them and make your changes, then hit update. You do have to go through and hit update on each of these individual fields. So we're doing an update on that one. And it will automatically go through and generate a new player 1 squad file. So we open this with right, and we've got an error. Alright guys, sorry about that. We ran into a small problem with the bug in the template there. I do to go ahead and fix this and put it up on the website, so you can go through and download it. I definitely, the one that comes with the version 2 is buggy, so go ahead and download the one that's attached to that same page and download that. Overwrite the one that's in the templates folder, and you should be good to go through and start using that. Sorry about that. Anyways, we'll go back to what we were working on here in the tutorial. We had gone through and said we were going to go through and put this as player at skill level 4 and skill level 1. We'll go ahead and hit update, and then we'll go through and take a look at the output file. We have a player 1 file here. We'll go ahead and reload this, and it has a 4 in here, a pilot skill value of 1, and you don't have any pilot skill values for any of the other ones here. So we'll go back to this, and we'll go through, and on pilot skill 2, we'll go through number 2. We'll go to make him 2, and we'll give him a unique identifier as 2. We'll go through and make him skill 4 and give him a unique identifier 3, and 4 again, and then we'll make him a unique identifier as 4. So once we've gone through and done that and updated each time, it will have gone through and updated within the player files here. Now the player 2 file is very similar. We've gone through and we're going to go through and set this so that we have a pilot skill value of 3. We don't necessarily have to give a unique identifier, but there is a bug within the other template that we'll go through and still display these. So you want to go through and tweak the M files. It's actually a good way to go through and learn how the free market template language works. Is just go in there, play with the templates. Make sure you make a backup copy of them, and then copy them off, and then restore them if you run into problems. So we're gonna go ahead and add a update here to A. We'll go through and make him a pilot skill 5, and we'll make him B. So in B, so we don't have to necessarily go through and use numbers. You can go through and use letters to go through and update and make the unique identifiers. Kath is going to be at 7 with, and she'll be C. So we do that. We go back over here to the text editor. We'll reload the files. You'll notice that there you got Torkel here at 3, 5, and 7. It shows the pilot skill values, and you can go through and change these. The nice thing about this is if for whatever reason, say Kath for whatever reason got the damaged cockpit critical hit card, reduced her pilot skill down to 0. She is now pilot skill 0. Her hull value is 3, and she has no shields because she got beat up on. We'll hit update. Come back over to our text editor here and review this, and you'll see that Kath is now at pilot skill 0, and she's down to 3 hull. That's just an easy way for you to go through and see that the real-time updating mechanism of the templates. If you had put this in OBS Studio as an overlay, as a text overlay, you would have gotten this information being streamed directly to the users as the match was happening. So that is basically that information. I am going to probably go through and do another video talking about a little bit more about the scripting languages and the extendability that you can go through and do with this. If people are interested, there are a couple pages out here on the wiki. There is a data model out here, and then there's also a new page I'm just going to start creating for example templates. Stuff that people can go through and use as a basis to learn how to go through and do their own templates out here. The first one I have out here is a Steel TV right aligned template, and how stuff would possibly look if you were going to go through and do the style that he uses for the right aligned text. The other one that's out there is the left aligned text, so we can go through and take a look at that. And you'll see this shows you how to go through and do comments, and then it shows you what the language itself was to go through and do this stuff. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on this right now. It needs really its own separate tutorial on how to go through and do this, and it's still evolving. But as we go through and go forward, I'll go through and create some more templates and more example tutorials on how to go through and use this. So in the meantime, make sure you do download that updated template that's out there, so you don't run into the bug that we ran into during the recording of this. And if you have any features or anything like that you want, make sure you post them out there in the Facebook XStreamer Squad Helper Facebook group, or go through and open up an issue on the GitHub project. And I look forward to hearing from you guys in the future. I do have some other stuff planned out here for it. I'll post some of that information out there on the Facebook group as well. Until next time, make sure you fly lots and lots of bombers. Talk to you later. Bye.